Thank you.
We're live now, Chair.
Brilliant. Good morning, everybody. Baradar Pab, thank you for joining Powis's Health and Social Care Scrutiny Committee this morning. We have one main area to consider, which is the medium-term financial strategy and budget for both of these services. But before we get on to that, do we have any apologies, please?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Cabinet Member, County Councillor Rafe Devlin, from Officers Sharon Frowen, Karen Arthur, Mary Thomas and Pamela Iyer, and we've received apologies for lateness from the Leader, County Councillor Jake Berryman.
I've also had apologies from Councillor Ben Breeze, who will be joining, but not straight away. Um, declarations of interest. If
Could I just give an apology, please, Chair?
Yeah.
I'll have to leave sometime between 11 and 12 o'clock, unfortunately. It's dependent when I receive a particular phone call, but there are sufficient finance officers here to answer any queries should that be required.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that notification. Any declarations of interest? If anything arises during the discussion where you think you've got a connection to it or an interest to declare, please declare it there and then. Disclosure of party whips. Cabinet response to scrutiny recommendation. Can we move this to the end of the agenda, please? Carrie Ann, is that okay?
Yes, Chair.
Just so that we can just jump straight into it. Okay, so the main item is the draft medium-term financial strategy, and this is to go through the budget for each service. We are going to start with adults, so I'd just like to welcome Nina Davis, the director, and all of the officers that have attended today. Oh, sorry, no, we're going to start with children's. Sorry, I've just realised I'm flipping it because of who's here. Sorry, we're going to start with children's. So yeah, also still being led by Nina and officers under Sharon Powell's leadership. And then we also have financial officers here today, as well as Jane, the director, and the portfolio holders. Welcome Councillor Sandra as portfolio holder for children's. I am going to hand over to you, and we have seen your presentation in advance, but I understand you're going to provide us with that presentation. And just as an overarching request, within your introductory comments, it would be really helpful to hear from you with an overview of what you think are the biggest risks impacting the budget over the next year. Also, the biggest positives you expect to pay off or to see in the next year that are associated with the budget. And I'll leave it at that. I think Councillor Sandra or Nina, whoever wants to lead, please do so. And if screens need sharing, then hopefully that is all ready to do.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Bore pawb. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me along for this meeting. We have in our packs some slides, I believe, and on mine it's page 16 or 45 relating to children's services. I don't know if people want to have a moment to get to that page, or do we want to share it on screen? Which way do you want to do it, Chair?
Are you going to be sharing? Are we going through the presentation? Is that probably the easiest thing to do? What's
for the budget? You mentioned the budget first.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure I followed what I thought you guys were leading with the presentation that you've prepared. It's like a slideshow, which kind of then you just talk through. If there's any other papers we need to flip to, then perhaps we should do it like that.
No, it's the slideshow I was referring to.
Oh, sorry,
yes. Budget. Sorry,
yes. The slideshow, please. That's great. Yeah.
Yes. And on that one, it's page 16 in the pack of
okay.
45.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's got children's services on the top. So if everybody has that one to hand.
Sorry, my page 16 isn't the slideshow.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think we're probably all clicking on. So what I'm doing is in the actual public web page, I can click on each document individually. So
Right.
I've been able to open up the slideshow as a separate sectional on its own. Yeah,
Diolch yn fawr.
that's exactly what we've got. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, we're all right together now. Thank you very much. Right, just if I may go through this document because it contains the information required for Children's Services, and I believe we have member of staff here from Children's Services who is our guru, and I'm sure that if I miss anything, she would be able to help as well. Right, if I may start, we've got the base budget of 25-26 as on the top there, which is 32,597K. And if we go down for the in-year changes, we have the inflationary pressures, as we can see, and the growth demography. We never have any money for our growth because we never know how our system's going to grow and we can't forecast that. So there's never any extra funding for that. So the minute that we have a family in, and it's usually on a Friday afternoon in the late, and we have a number of youngsters who come in and we have to accommodate our youngsters as best we can. Okay. Sorry.
Gareth, you're not on mute. Gareth, can you put your microphone on mute, please?
Thank you. So then we have our service pressures, which is 156. It is a 1 there. I believe that should be a naught. It's just a blip, I think, a typo. And then we've got our proposed savings of 1256K. And if we add those up, then we come to our results, which is the service pressures is sorry. I've lost where I am at the minute with my notes. I got quite a few papers here in front of me. So the service pressures is 1560K, as I've said, with that mistake there. We go on to the service pressures then, and they are listed for us all to see. And we've got our full year effective demography of children from 25-26 held at risk on the FRM, less changes in placement because of the age transitions, and then the demography required in leaving care due to turning 18. And the internal residential home changes, and then the internal residential grant funding to support above. And the contract provider uplifts include real living wage, which is the RLW, and direct payment uplift. And as we are aware, the real living wage has increased exponentially, and that is why we're asking for an extra amount in our budget of 3%. And then our proposed savings, which will even out, and you will find the difference between our base budget of 32,597 and the draft-based budget request for 26-27, which is 33,580K of 3%. Those proposed the proposed savings are cost savings from using permanent social workers once qualified instead of agency based on grow our own projects, master's students and 50% open university students plus market supplement. If I just pause there from the actual document and explain regarding our grow our own, that's been increasing over the years. When I first became portfolio, Councillor Susan McNicholas and I'm sure you remember, were sharing the portfolio. I believe we had in over 50 agency workers at that time. And I'm pleased to report that in the December budget papers that we received, we are now down to 10. So that's really a big reduction. There will always be a requirement for some agency staff because we haven't got a crystal ball, as been said, and we have to accommodate our young children and make sure that they are safe. So there will always be a need for some agency workers. I just wanted to put that in there just to highlight the changes that have been made. And then the service redesign, the AI and Magic Notes co-pilot translation of documents in multiple languages and the replacement of WCCIS. Magic Notes is making a huge difference to our staff's working and reducing and freeing up some of their time in taking minutes and notes and recording things effectively. The not-for-profit fostering repayment of investment to save and reduction of project team when fully implemented. This is a new project and we're in the infancy, but it is beginning to show fruit as we speak. There has been an increase and the staff have really worked hard during the summer, having workshops and meetings with individuals. And there's been a big interest in an increased interest in fostering. And we have a number of families that have come forward and going through the system. And we have the new system, which is supporting existing foster carers, which is working effectively. And families are beginning to roll into the system. So it is beginning to bear fruit, but we have to just give it time to embed in and to work through effectively. The 16 plus accommodation increase in December of houses from housing stock for support needs, residential homes and service delivery changes. With the 16 plus accommodation, we have brought some youngsters back into county, which were high placements outside of county. So that's reduced the cost quite considerably there and is beginning to bear fruit as well. And our residential homes, we did have last year we decided that we would closet 2 of our homes, and we have now turned that round, and we've managed to go through CIW to make sure that our sprinkling system and everything is ticking the box for CIW. As a result of that, we are now our own residential homes are full, and we are, as I said, there are savings there. Our savings are ongoing as we speak, and I just thought I would pause there for a moment in case you have any questions on the budget, please.
Thank you, Councillor Sandra. I think we definitely do have questions, but we probably would like to give you the opportunity to finish off the presentation, and then we'll split our questions into 2 sections, one relating to overarching issues, stroke pressures, and then other into cost efficiencies. But from your perspective, is there anything else to add on the children's budget? And also my initial question at the outset to do with where you see the biggest risks impacting next year's budget, and also the biggest positives or the things that you're looking forward to paying off that are going to bring costs down or outcomes improving based on what you're investing.
Thank you, Chair. I will carry on then. Yes, the children's services are continuing to strengthen and build up. There are 3 key areas outlined within their integrated business plan, which are right help, right time, closer to home, and building a sustainable and supportive workforce. For the past 2 to 3 years, the focus has been to continue to build upon these areas. As a result, there have been positive improvements. The work around right help, right time, ensuring that more children can access Flying Start provision, and that's really increased because we are now into our 3rd phase, and the number of new provisions that have been opened up throughout Powys has increased, providing support for youngsters as they come into the education system, and care for parents, enabling them to go to work or whatever, and giving them good opportunities. So the provision built upon our intervention and prevention through our early help services and family centres. And we have an increase in our family centres, and we're still planning to do more throughout the county. And these providing valuable assets for parents and support when they have any queries or any concerns. They can meet staff, etc. So the family services are working well. We are also reviewing our front door and the way in which referrals are processed into the service. And there have been many changes there, an increase, but we do have high volumes of queries coming through there. I can see Nina's got a hand up. I don't know if she's to come in or she wants to wait. Okay, thank you. Diolch yn fawr. We have concentrated on reducing our child protection register with a focus on the right plans for children, and that too, our statistics are improved over the year, and we did have a very good report in our Q3 in December. We have concentrated specifically on our closer to home work, where the aim of this work is where children need to be children who are looked after by the council. and that these children remain as close to their families as possible. We found that that's the best place for young children to be. They want to be home with their parents, if at all possible, and our staff do their utmost in order to make sure that they are safe and comfortable at home with the right support. The investment in the fostering framework has seen an increase in Powys foster carers, and this will continue to grow in 26-27. We've also stepped down children from residential homes, as I said previously, to our 16 plus accommodation, which has generated savings. So these are some of the positives, as I'm sure you will appreciate. Within our workforce, we have continued to invest and grow our own scheme and seen 6 newly qualified social workers come into the service over the past year. We have 10 students on our placements right now who will be applying for positions over this next year. And this will enable us to reduce our agency social workers. I'll pause there just a second because with our Grow Our Own, they are newly qualified individuals who are keen and eager to get into work, but they do need support. And that means that we have to make time scales for our existing staff to be able to import in support our new social workers. So there are balancing acts to be put there. So with the good increase in new social workers coming in, they do need that extra support. So that it does give a little bit more pressure to our existing staff who are happy to do this, but it's important that we have the right procedures in place, and that will enable us to reduce our agency social workers. As I've said before, we will need to keep some. By concentrating on reducing our inherited overspend debt from previous years and by successfully achieving it, this has put us onto the front foot financially for this year. So that again is one of our positives. It's our staff working together and all having the same aim to put our children at the forefront. The challenges within the year remain as acute today as they have done over the recent years, with the rising cost of residential placements always being in the spotlight. However, the intention is to build on the fostering framework over the next financial year and pay back the investment. Our ambition is, as always, to keep children as safely at home as possible and ensure that they remain the focus at the heart of our service. Chair, I have been liaising with my colleagues in WLGA regarding the non-for-profit scheme that they've encouraged all authorities to embark upon. And as a result, I've had a very comprehensive report back from what Welsh Government are doing in order to try to combat the problem here. There have been I'll just read a little bit of it, the introduction of some of the work that has gone on within Welsh Government to support not just our authority, but all of the authorities as well, who are embarking on the same road, going on the same road as we are. To support implementation of the removal of the profit ambition, Welsh Government established a cross-sector Eliminating Profit Programme Board. The board oversees Welsh Government's national programme plan for removing profit, which sets out high-level activity and milestones for Welsh Government care, Inspectorate Wales and local authorities through the implementation period. A national level local government implementation plan for removing profit is coordinated by ADSS Cymru. And I'll try and find out what the ADSS is, and I'll come back to you on that one. So underneath the 4 core ADSS working groups, there's Future Implementation Group, a Communications and Engagement Group, a Legal and Policy Group, and a Governance Group. And they've injected, the funding is 68 million funding made available between 22-23 and 24-25. So the Welsh Government has allocated 75 million to 2028 through the Eliminate and Radical Reform grant to support local authorities and regions in developing new residential and fostering services. And in addition, other funding streams such as health and social care integration and rebalancing capital fund, IRCF, with a budget of 70 million per annum for 25-27. This designed to support the rebalancing of the residential care market and explicitly includes eliminating private profit from children's residential care as a key priority. I won't go on, Madam Chair, because I think that will take up too much of our time, but I have a very comprehensive report from Welsh Government and they are very keen on eliminating the profiteering of children's services and residential cares, and I think it's the right thing for us to do, and we are on that road to do that. I will now conclude, Madam Chair, and I hope that I'm ready for any questions, and I'm sure our officers, as I said, Jackie Pugh is with us and Nina has her hand up. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for going through that. Yes, Nina, anything that you want to add to this, and also Sharon to add, and then I'm quite keen that we get on to questioning within the next 10 minutes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in with my response to your initial questions that you set out at the beginning in terms of the risks, positives, opportunities, challenges, etc. As you'll all be very aware, as a Health and Care Scrutiny Committee, this is a demand-led statutory service. And with that, it always means that we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know what children and families are going to be coming to the front door requiring our support and what level of support is required, etc. So I think, that's always a risk that we need to bear in mind. We do not have growth demography built in. We hold demography at risk. So I think that's always important was going through our budget at this time of year that we just remind ourselves of that. I think Councillor Sandra's given you a really detailed update about lots of positive work that's happening in terms of support for closer to home, keeping our children and young families safe, etc. But she also touched on another one of my kind of risks I'd like to highlight again is, the cost of placements. The team are doing really good work to support children and young families. And we have seen at the moment a reduction in number of placements, but the increasing costs, average cost of those placements, I think we've got to make sure that we note here today. For myself, one of the positives from the current year has been the fostering framework. It's been really pleasing to see the number of inquiries, the number of new applications and new foster carers coming into the system. So a real positive for me. But I do, as is often the case, need to flag the risk with that. We've got a £620,000 cost efficiency saving for next year to repay the invest to save. The scheme so far has been really positive and delivered cost avoidance, but moving into that cost efficiency, etc. I just need to flag that. And you'll note within the papers that have been reported to you and published that we have rated that as a red rag rating, because highlighting the risk around that. And also highlighted as a red is the 16 plus accommodation, very much reliant on appropriate properties being available to help us meet that cost efficiency saving as well. So happy to, Chair, if that's okay, hand over to the Head of Service, Sharon Powell, for her response to your questions. But I just wanted to reiterate at this stage, the service and us as officers, and obviously all of us, we keep children and young people at the heart of all decisions, and that's really important. And I just wanted to finish on that note. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nina. Sharon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So you recall as a Health and Care Scrutiny Committee that the last couple of years, our integrated business plan is focused on 3 key areas, which is right help, right time, closer to home, and building a sustainable and supported workforce. So that plan is kind of coming into fruition now in terms of not only our budget position, but in terms of the position for children and young people in Powys. So we are keeping more children closer to home by growing and developing our fostering framework, as been highlighted by Councillor Davis and Nina. That's a real positive. That's also still a real opportunity to grow into next year. We're looking at becoming a foster-friendly organisation as a council, which is really important. We're looking at local businesses that can actually join that kind of fostering family kind of network. And by that, we are hoping to increase even more fostering opportunities over the next year. And that's critical in line with the legislation changes around the not-for-profit, which is legislation. It is about us bringing as many children as is possible back into Powys by 2030. So our ambition is that every child that's currently looked after outside of Powys, outside of Wales, are all going to be brought back in county into Powys by 2030. And the way in which we're going to achieve that is through our fostering framework kind of opportunities, but also by building our own internal residential homes. So this last 12 months, whereby we had put a kind of press pause on 2 of our homes, we now have those homes back open, and we're looking at developing those homes in a different way. So we need to grow in this area by creating more opportunities around our residential provision. But at the same time, that can come with a risk, because that is about growth in terms of our residential homes. But we need to also meet the needs of those children with complex needs that need to be in those residential provision. But if you marry that up with the high cost trajectory of placements outside of Powys, outside of Wales, that's where we're hoping that we can offset some of that challenge. But there is a risk associated with that in terms of financial risk, in terms of meeting those individual children's needs within that kind of residential platform. So that's an area of risk for us. That the area of challenge is having enough placements to meet all of those children coming back to Powys, as I said, and particularly if they've got particular complex needs. But very much that is about working with education services, working with Powys Teaching Health Board, looking at those individual plans for children so that we can actually meet the needs of those children right back here, right in Powys. There's lots of opportunities to continue to grow. So in terms of our Grow Our Own project, as Councillor Davis has mentioned, we have potentially got 10 students that are qualifying this next 12 months as part of that programme. And whilst we can't just match each of those students against a particular agency post, what we are looking to do is reduce those agency posts to as close to zero as we possibly can get, whilst we support those newly qualified social workers into the service, develop with them so that they can actually remain here in Powys and kind of grow with us as a service. So there's lots of opportunities within that. In terms of redesign of the service, we're always looking at new ways of working. So the use of artificial intelligence and looking at different ways of kind of using opportunities digitally is really as critical to us as it is on the other areas that I've mentioned. And that actually is going to enable us to be more efficient, more effective in terms of recording of information and just delivery of service, particularly at the front door, where we receive so much information into that front door. The use of artificial intelligence and doing things in a slightly different way will just enhance the way in which we do things. So I guess there's lots of opportunities. We don't stand still. We're always looking at new ways of working and new ways of trying to work with children and families to keep them closely connected as is possible and to keep children as safely as is possible at home. So you'll be also aware about our intervention and prevention agenda. So we're looking at a new edge of care model, which fits very much into that right help, right time space. It's about enabling families to stay more closely connected and kind of working with them at the earliest opportunity rather than preventing that risk. But as Nina said, we're very much a demand-led service, so we don't absolutely know what service we're going to need to provide at any time. But I would like to assure you that the work that we've done on those 3 areas of the integrated business plan has really kind of put us into a much more stable position through not only financially, but in terms of a service, in terms of the way in which we operate, but also the stability within our workforce. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you all. I think we're going to go on to questioning now. And I think to some extent you have answered my question about the positives and certainly where you see the risks. I think we'll probably dig deeper into some of those red areas in the cost reductions. Sort of another overarching question for me is just building on looking forward towards the next year and how you've calculated the surface pressures, and it's just how confident you are, given trends from historic years, that you've hopefully got this as right as you can be for this year, have you built in the unknowns that have come to light in previous years where you haven't expected those? Are those all built into your projections? So I'll leave that with you, and I'm going to start with questioning. And I've got Councillor Gareth, whose hand is up first. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I start with the main service pressure that you've got, Sharon and Sandra, around the full year effect of demography? In Sandra's presentation, she said that the 1.16 million is coming from the budget being held at risk. How much of the risk budget are we using in 25-26?
Who's answering that? Is that Jackie or Sharon?
I think that probably needs to come from Jackie in terms of that overarching figure.
Okay, thank you. Jackie, do you just want to, for the public, just explain what your job role is? Just, I know we know, but just so that we all know who each officer is as they start speaking.
Morning, Jackie Pugh, Finance Manager for Social Care.
Thank you.
At the present moment, we're not, at the end of Q3, going to be drawing anything down from the risk reserve. We've managed the demography within the current baseline budget. There are many mitigating decisions that the team have made, for example, holding posts. But this figure within the FRM is modelling all of the current children that we have, the full year effect next year, and where they will be moving within the service dependent on their age.
Yeah. Can I thank you, Jackie? That's really good. Can I follow up from that? I note that on that line over the 5 years, it amounts to 6.33 million of pressures, but you're suggesting that after 27-28, that pressure is mitigated by closer own issues. I have a major concern about the not-for-profit process, because all that seems to be doing is escalating our costs. Can you clarify when the not-for-profit scheme should kick in for actually provision?
Sharon, do you want to?
Yeah, I can come in here. So the not-for-profit scheme's already started. So that's partly around looking at what we were looking at in terms of our trajectory of that journey from previous years up to 2030. So the fostering framework is key to the not-for-profit agenda. So building as many fostering opportunities in Powys as we possibly can do. The building of our residential homes is also an aspect of the not-for-profit agenda in terms of having as many children that need residential support right here in Powys. And the same with our 16 plus provision. So it's about trying to prevent those children escalating into residential provision or into a foster placement by keeping them in a 16 plus provision. So we've already started that journey of work, and that trajectory will continue now right up until 2030.
So have we seen a drop or a stabilisation in the cost of placements for children in Wales because of the not-for-profit scheme, or is it not had that impact yet?
I would suggest it's not had that direct impact yet. I think there's still a lot of mobility within in that kind of provider area market currently, but Fostering Wales are doing a lot of work in terms of working within the fostering arena. So like independent fostering agency placements, they're looking at the cost of those, looking at the cost of fostering within local authorities, looking if those kind of prices can be kind of married up a little bit more. And certainly here in Powys, we took that brave step of increasing our fostering allowance, and that actually has generated many more foster carers coming through in terms of our fostering network. So I would say it's having an impact there for us in Powys. With the residential provision, there is still a rising cost of individual placements for some children. So we haven't seen that market change quite as strongly yet as it is in terms of fostering.
Okay, thank you. And do we do any benchmarking then across our costs compared to other authority costs?
Yeah, so we look at a lot of benchmarking with other local authorities. So there's a national kind of picture around this. I sit on some of those forums, so we're able to kind of look at those benchmarking areas, yes.
Okay. And how do our costs compare to other authorities? Similar or higher or?
Similar, I think, where I said we've been brave with our fostering framework and taken that leap to increase our fostering allowances. Other local authorities now are looking at us in terms of how and what we have done to look if they can do something similar. So we definitely have been one of the outliers in that area. In terms of the residential costs, we've got less children in residential care now, so we've stepped down quite a lot of children into different placements, which is really positive for them. That's where we're not quite seeing the costs, but in terms of overall costs, that is very similar for local authorities in terms of those residential costs.
Okay, thank you.
Sandra, did you want to come in on that point or those
Yes.
questions that Gareth raised?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. I've identified now in the report that I'd received the ADSS, what I'd said that I was going to find out what that was abbreviation was for. It's the Association of Directors of Social Services. And just to tell you that the WLGA are very much aware because they are involved with all local authorities. We're all in the same position. They are working very hard on this. They brought it in, but they didn't just leave it and dump it onto the local authorities. There's background work going on as we speak. And the Association of Directors of Education in Wales, ADEW, are planning on meeting with the Association of Directors for Social Services, ADSS Cymru, in February, and that will be this very point will be discussed then. There are, as I said, 4 groups that are working on this, and Powys was the only area to show a net fall in children's home placements over the period, with 5 places registered and 7 places deregistered, and 7 deregistered places were all not for profit provision, were all for profit provision. So as Sharon has said, we are one of the leaders in this. We've picked up the gauntlet, we are running with it, and we are being recognised with it. So Powys are doing well in this position, but it is, we as I said, we are working on it still. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think I'd just like to come in on that point just because it seems timely. And can we see the report? Can we be provided with the report that you've had back from the WLG that you referred to in your introduction? Because I think it would be helpful for us to read through that and understand that. And it does sound like, they are fully aware of the problem. And you mentioned that there's lots of groups being set up and that they're investing 75 million. And I don't think my criticism is anything to do with what us as a council are or not doing, or indeed other councils, because you're all in the same boat. But from what it seems, and please correct me if you have a different perspective, that this profiteering is being expedited by and exacerbated due to the not-for-profit agenda coming in. So providers are doing what they can now to make a profit because they know that it's being phased out. So how is the Welsh government? Yes, they've got a plan for the long term to prevent it, but what are they doing with the short term? Because this is impacting you guys now. It's impacting the budget significantly and every council's budget significantly. And because this is a statutory service, and because you rightly say that our children have to come first, we have to look after children. We have to pay these provider costs, and that means that there's less money in the overarching budget for all of the other non-statutory services. So what are Welsh Government doing in the short term, really? And maybe that is addressed in the report that I've asked for. But from your perspective, is my perception right?
I think yes, I agree with you there, Chair, because that is something that we've found prices have increased since this was implemented. But just to reassure you, I will share the report. I've already passed it on to Sharon, and I will go through it. And I don't think that there's anything that shouldn't be shared. It's open government. I will make sure that you do receive that, and you can read it for yourself to find out. But yes, the Welsh Government are aware of it. They know of the profiteering, and they are working on it, as I said. And there are a number of various groups that are working in trying to fast forward it, basically. I I will have to go through the report yet again, because it mentions about the funding, it says about the progress and about how many meetings that they are planning. And then I've got another one then giving more information. So I will share all of that with you, and there are
Okay.
links to it. Yes.
Okay, I think it's possibly slightly outside of our remit as to how far down we go in terms of what WLGA are able to do. But I think as a recommendation, we would like the report, and potentially this is something we'd like to consider. And it may be that we have questions further on whether, as a cabinet or with collectively WLGA, you are able to ask more about their short-term solutions to this expedited problem. And I'll leave it at that. Unless any officers have got anything they'd like to chip in as a response to that. I can see Sharon's got her hand up.
Yeah, just to add, Chair, if I can, that from the perspective of children, they've been really instrumental in creating the kind of not profiteering for themselves being with the children who are looked after. So some of our care leavers have actually been instrumental in lobbying Welsh Government with the Children's Commissioner about actually wanting to remove the profit from care. And I think that as a value basis, they would say, if they were in the meeting, that that's absolutely what they would want to see happen. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is critical of the objective. I think it's the problem that has the long-term objective has created in the short term. That's my concern. Because the short term has been at least 2 financial years that this has been having an impact now. Okay, Councillor Chris.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Sandra and Sharon, for the presentation so far. Can I start off by saying well done for the continued success in our Grow Our Own programme and the reduction in agency costs. I think it demonstrates how you can go from a theoretical perspective and build it and then deliver it not only over 1 year, but continuously on there. So that's really good news. And also, can I just say, we're talking about budgets, but what we're also talking about is people on the ground, and our staff are our greatest resource. And I just want to say thank you to them, because they do a tremendous job under quite a bit of pressure at times on the, particularly when we look at demand. And when I saw the presentation, I was a little bit, nil for growth in demography. And I thought, what's the methodology regarding that, and why do we do that? So a question from me then is, have we ever had a year where we've had nil growth demography? Because I would be interested to know if we have had that. Because if you look then down at your service pressures, you're saying that last year it was 1160. So I would anticipate that at the end of the year, we would have some growth demography costs. And in some ways, it gives me an artificial picture in relation to the true situation going on. So I just wondered whether through modelling we could model that more effectively, because if I look at the adult service growth demography, you have factored that in based on what's potentially coming through the system. And I do acknowledge what Sandra said, or Sharon, that sometimes we don't know what's going to come through the door and how that's going to play out. But we anticipate there will be something coming through the door, and it would be better to put it in because it gives us more realistic expectation of expenditure moving forward. The other aspect I just wanted to come back to is in relation to the service redesign. I'm really pleased that this is coming in, and it's regarding the magic notes and the use of AI, and I think that's really encouraging to see. But how does that link into the new replacement wicket system? We've not, to my knowledge, seen what that system can now do, the replacement. Is that going to tie in with Magic Notes? Is that going to make it more efficient and build on the... I think I was going to ask some questions regarding some of the placements as well. I won't go into some of the foster care because I think you covered it. I just want assurance that when we're looking at children's placements and some of these expensive placements, that we are challenging these providers that are trying to actually go for profit rather than for care. And I think it should be care, not profit. And I endorse that principle around that that we're trying to get to. So well done for what you've done so far. But those questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. So I've got a few questions there that Chris needs answering. Who wants to lead? Was the first one on the WICIS one, Chris?
I would say about the methodology around
methodology.
The growth demography.
Yes.
Why are we leaving it at 0? I think that we could model that and then looking back at what's previously happened to give us an insight, because we do that with service pressures, which is also demography. And I'm a little bit confused because why we badge them slightly differently, but
okay, we'll take each of those in turn then. Sharon or Nina, who wants to address that first one, please?
Sharon, I think you're on mute.
Apologies, I was just going to say I was going to leave that question to Nina or to Jackie to answer the growth particular question. I'll come in on the other questions though.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to start. There is a key difference between the growth demography in adults and children. So I think it's probably important that we start there. So when you're looking at, for example, in adults, when you're looking at the growth demography, they're about known young people who are transitioning from children's services into adult social services. So these are people that, adult and children's services have been working together on transitions for a number of years. So the placements have been right-sized. We know what those costs and the impact are going to be coming into a financial year. They've been modelled, as you say, Councillor Chris. In terms of children's services, that's not the case. So we hold growth demography at the moment at risk. So we don't have a budget built in. These are not known. We don't know as a service who is going to be coming in terms of children and young families, young children and families, etc. into. So we hold that at risk. We have, and I'd have to ask finance colleagues to pull on the detail. We have had to use risk, I believe, over recent years. We haven't as yet within the current year had access to the risk budget. But of course, it's also a part year. So the full year effect of demography there is from, we've covered the part year effect, as Jackie outlined earlier, through mitigations that the service have been able to put into place. And then the full year impact, the full year known impact is that 1.16, which we are factoring in moving forward. So I just wanted to highlight the difference there between the adults and the children's services. Thank you.
Thanks, Nina. Does that answer your question, Chris?
It does, and I understand it. But I'll leave it there, Chair.
Okay. WICIS and AI.
Yes, I'll come in on the answer to this question, Chair. So in terms of Magic Notes, that in terms of giving you assurance, it won't make any difference at all from us moving from the WICIS system to the Eclipse system. The plan is to move to that new database system in July of this coming year. But Magic Notes actually is a transcribing service. So actually you can use that and it will just embed into the new documents on the new system. So just to provide you the assurance that won't make any difference at all in terms of moving to a new system. And in terms of challenging on placement costs, yes, we do that all of the time through our commissioning colleagues in terms of challenging providers around the costs that they're asking. We ask for breakdown of those costs so we can absolutely see what those costs are attributed to. And we do very much challenge and negotiate with providers in terms of getting the best cost-effective care plan for any child in that arena.
Thank you.
And then the last question, which I can't remember, sorry, Chris.
I thought there was those three. That's all right.
Okay, if you feel everything's been answered, that's great.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, right. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation as well. And a bit like Chris, it's amazing to see how many savings can be made and a service which is already experiencing so much pressure. I was wondering if we could explore a bit more about the service redesign, just to get a bit more of an understanding from me on that point. Kind of follows on from what Chris mentioned around the use of AI and the other digital services. It's great to see that these are being used to incorporate efficiencies into it, but I just wondered if you could give a bit of an idea of what impact this might have on our service users and maybe also on the staff. I'm obviously conscious that we don't lose that in-person face-to-face interface that we have, and it's so important for lots of people as well. And then I have one sort of follow-up question as well, just to see whether you feel we have the skills in-house to make these changes. You know, there's all sorts of risks around using AI, and we need to make sure that we've got time and capacity built in to check over the things that come out of it. Otherwise, we could end up with all sorts of slightly strange things being recorded on there as well. So, you know, we don't want to rely on it too much. Thank you.
Thanks, Clary. Who's going to pick that up then, please?
Yeah, I'll pick that up, Chair. So, yeah, thank you, Councillor, for those questions. In terms of the redesign, some of the areas that we're looking at, so we've had magic notes over the last 12 months. We're looking to further kind of roll that out in terms of the service across the next 12 months in terms of just building on that. And a couple of areas that we're specifically looking at are translation services. So looking at a digital service that can instantly translate into different languages. We have a number of different languages that are in Powys, and we need to actually equip ourselves to be able to communicate with those individuals in their native tongue. And so the Speak digital translation will really help that in terms of that progress. So we're looking at trialing that now in the next month. And we're also trialing a Speak AI bot at the front door. So whereby if people are ringing into the front door, having initial conversations before they need to actually speak to a social worker or somebody else, then the Speak AI bot will kind of take those initial calls and filter those calls to the relevant people. So again, we're going to trial that to see if that will make a difference in terms of the volume of calls that comes through the front door to make us more efficient in terms of in the way in which we're working. So they'll be trialed, and obviously the analysis then will be looked at in terms of whether we actually take either of those options up. In terms of, as you mentioned, the capacity to always reread everything, I think social work staff and staff themselves are saying they'd far rather have the magic notes, reread what it's actually contained and adjust that accordingly before they input that onto the system, rather than not having it at all and having to document all of that themselves. So in effect, it has become a more efficient way of working. It's not without its difficulties, as you said. It is about, you do have to reread everything and make sure it's absolutely accurate before you put that onto the child's file. But actually, it's taking less time to do that than actually record everything yourself in the first place.
Thanks, Sharon. Chloe, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's really good to hear there's a conscious sort of effort around this. I just wondered as well, so firstly on trialing the phone service, whether we can just make sure there's always an option of speak to a person, because for lots of people it can be, I don't know, anyone else find it frustrating trying to speak to a bot that doesn't always understand what you're saying? That would be really handy. And then just around the skills in-house, obviously the Magic Notes is being used, but whether we're going to be providing people with training on the sort of some of the pitfalls that can come with use of AI, but obviously lots of the advantages as well, to make sure it's really efficiently used.
I'm more than happy to pick up those points, Councillor, and make ensure that we have those options in terms of speaking to someone and or the bot And absolutely, we work very much as a corporate service on the other areas in terms of digital team, information compliance, etc., are all very much joined in terms of some of those pitfalls, as you said, around the learning from that. So it is a constant learning process around that.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sandra, did you want to come in on those points?
Yes, please, Chair. Just regarding our front door system, with our stats we do have track records of what comes in through our front door, and the numbers are quite high, and quite a lot of the queries that come in are for information, and that can be dealt with quite quickly. So I'm sure that using the automated system, that the individuals can be redirected straight away then, and that's one way of reducing some of the workload from our frontline staff, and to reassure you that when and if a person needs to speak to somebody, that will be adhered to as well. But a lot of information can be done straight away, just passing on to a telephone number or giving a piece of paper or something. So those can be dealt off quickly, and that will save time for frontline staff. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you. And just to chip in on this AI point, as a committee, and I'm sure wider than that, it would be really helpful for us to have some training, which I know I've said previously, on how or even a member development on how AI is generally being used across the council, but also for our own personal efficiency improvements as councillors, how, what systems we have access to and what we can use as well. Gareth, can I just park you a second and just double check with Anne, because you've already asked a question, I just want to double check with Councillor Ange whether the questions we discussed in the pre-meet have been addressed. I know, Councillor Ange, you had questions on the not-for-profit, which you may feel have been answered, but you also, I think, had a question on grant funding. Did you want to ask that?
Yeah, that would be lovely. I think my not-for-profit fostering has been answered and my magic notes has been answered, so both of those are fine. Mitigation with the risk on grants. I'm grateful that we get grants, but it always worries me that what we get given can get taken away at any time. What mitigation do we have towards looking into what will replace them if we don't happen to get them, or if they don't appear later on in the year or next year? Is there any reassurance that I can be given with that?
Thank you, Angela. Could you, just in the answer to the question, whoever's going to pick it up, could you just explain to us as well which parts of the service area are, the biggest risk for where you do have grant funding as well? Sharon? Nina?
I'm not sure if somebody else may want to come in on the grant question as well. But yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor. I think this is an area of risk, I would suggest, in terms of grant funding, because we never absolutely know what we're going to get and when we're going to get it. And that's been a kind of rolling theme with grants in recent years, really. So in terms of mitigations, we constantly review those areas of grant funding, what grants we actually get, what is the likely impact if that grant funding doesn't emerge. Quite often in the year, what we seem to have is a flurry of maybe grant funding coming through in Q4, and with actually a deadline of actually having to spend that by at the end of the financial year. So those don't actually create that much risk in terms of that, because there's always opportunities to look at that specific grant and use that and utilise that in year. I think some of the bigger grants, like the Social Services and Sustainability Grant, is a big grant that all local authorities receive. If we suddenly did not get that grant for whatever reason, then with the mitigations we would have would be looking at what we fund from that grant and how we can replicate that within our base budget or deliver that service in a different way. We quite often use that grant to try things out to see if actually we can deliver something in a slightly different way. So we use it more creatively rather than actually for sustainability. So in effect, if the mitigation is if that grant didn't evolve for whatever reason, we'd have to absorb whatever we would use it for within the kind of base budget.
Thank you for your answer. Yeah, I assumed that that's what it would be, but for me, as always, it is quite a large risk. I would like to congratulate you all. I don't think the budget this year is as bad as it could have been. I think you've all worked really hard on it. And again, I'd like to thank all our staff for all that they do for the children. I will say that for adults as well, because I know you work your best. But yeah, thank you very much for all that you do.
Thank you, Councillor Ange. Nina, did you want to come in on
Yeah,
those questions?
thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Williams, for your question. It's a really good point and important to raise. Yeah, across not just children's services, but across directorates across the council, we do have a significant income from grants, etc. So it is very important. In terms of looking forward to next financial year, at this stage, I'm not aware of any significant grant changes expected. But just to give you an example of RIF, for example, so Regional Integrated Funding, which comes through the Regional Partnership Board, we know that the current funding is due to end in March 2027. So what we are doing across the partnership, and we've already started this work, is looking at what the exit plans for those projects is. So working on whether we bring those into base budgets, etc., whether we work to look at other sources of funding. So just to give you that assurance, Councillor Williams, that it is captured within as a risk in future years for a change to potential grant funding. And we're making sure that we work now with projects and partners to look at what future plans may be. And we are also, and I've raised as part of meetings with Welsh Government, etc., the importance of us as regional partnership boards and for us as local authorities of knowing what the replacement grant funding will be through that area as soon as possible, so that partners have all got time to prepare and plan for any of those changes as well. So just to give you a bit of an example, Councillor Williams, I thought that might be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Nina. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, can I ask a question about the two proposed savings around 16 plus accommodation and the residential home service delivery changes that amount to 400,000 for 26/7, and then that saving is replicated then over the next 4 years. So are we saying that we're going to reduce our net spend in those two areas by the 2 million over that 5-year period? Is that achievable?
Sharon?
So in terms of those two areas, they're very much about us having an increase in housing stock for our 16 plus provision. And that will enable us to kind of grow that area of that age group in terms of opportunities for them, and also prevent that need sometimes for a young person maybe coming into foster care or going into a residential provision. So that would mitigate against that increased cost because you're providing a service in a different way. So the aim is to provide more opportunities for 16 plus provision across the whole of the council in terms of geography. So I think that's a really important message, because historically we were placing children of this particular age group outside of Powys. We were using provision in Herefordshire quite a lot. Herefordshire have got a college, etc. So it was attracting quite a lot of people at that particular time, or young people at that time, to go there. We've turned that around and actually invested in having more homes here across Powys and attached to colleges that we've got, to keep more opportunities for young people to stay in Powys. So that will absolutely assist in terms of developing that opportunity to keep young people here and keep them in houses here and college here and hopefully employment here. So that I don't think is it's ambitious, but it has a risk, because if we don't have the housing stock, then we can't deliver what we need to. But absolutely, it's an ambitious area. It comes with risk around having the opportunity to be ambitious in the houses. But actually, what we have noticed over recent years where we've tried this and been successful at it, it's really offers a much better positive outcome for young people to stay in Powys and remain here where they need to. So we don't tend to use those provisions at all now in terms of the bordering counties, which we were doing 2 or 3 years ago. And the same with all our residential homes. We are looking to expand our residential homes. So that's what this is about. This is about an expansion of our residential homes to offer more opportunities for children to return back to Powys rather than rely on higher cost placements outside of the county. So whilst it's ambitious, it's not unachievable at this point. But again, it will be monitored and measured throughout the year in terms of where we get to in terms of those particular areas.
Yeah, that's for 26, 27. Do you have that same level of confidence for the future years? And I suppose the follow-up question is, could the savings that you identify for years 3, 4, and 5 be forward into 26, 7 and 27, 8?
I mean, that would be really ambitious to be able to deliver that right now. And I can't assure you that's a potential in future years. What I can assure you is that for next year, that's absolutely what we're striving to do. And our ambition is about delivering that next year. We'll take stock in next year to then see how and what we can then effectively deliver in future years.
So are you saying that those future years figures of 400,000 you've got in this document for the 4 years starting April 27 are at a high level of risk?
I think it's all got a level of risk, as I said, in terms of the ambition. But the direction of travel is absolutely to work with that trajectory and deliver that. But right now, I can't actually assure you in terms of future years. All I can do is assure you that this is what we're going to kind of deliver and be ambitious about for next year.
Thank you.
Gareth, is there a recommendation there that you seem to be forming in your mind, or?
I'm already writing it.
Okay, do you want to share that with us?
I just think we need to have further assurance around those two lines. Not so much as 26/7, but for future years, because obviously the long-term position of the budget is quite dire. Now, with nearly a £10 million gap already identified for 27/8. Personally, I think we should be looking to see how we can reduce that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, if you want to give some thought to how you want to frame your recommendation, we'll consider it at the end.
Yeah.
Any other questions from councillors? No, thank you. Well, thank you so much for going through things so thoroughly and for answering our questions. I know Councillor Ben isn't here yet, but he also wanted to pass on his thanks on and sort of well dones on the positive grow your own work and the implications that's had on the budget and how positive that is. And I think we've probably made a note of a couple of recommendations. And I think I'll just leave one final question with yourselves, Councillor Sandra, Sharon and Nina, whether there's anything as a scrutiny committee you think that over the next year, from a budgetary perspective, you would like us to keep a close eye on, whether you think it would be helpful for us to do a deep dive into any of these areas where you've potentially identified more high risk, or anything you would appreciate our input on that's coming down the line that has a significant budgetary impact. Nina.
Thank you, Chair. I think my suggestion would be for Health and Care Scrutiny to consider where we've ragged a red rag rating, that the things there is a risk around delivery. I think for me, I would suggest they might be areas that you wish to consider, perhaps for deep dives and future sessions at committee to come forward. And of course, we'd be happy to support and attend, and we would welcome the opportunity to have that kind of a session with you and yourselves as well. Thank you.
Councillor Sandra.
I just want to say thank you to you all, because your questions do make us think more of what we're doing and how we are doing it and keeping us on track. And I'd like to thank you for complimenting our staff, because it's something that I do as well, because I do know the pressures that they work under and how they are trying their best for our young children to keep them safe. So collectively, we are all working together to make sure our children are catered for in Powys as safely and as securely as possible. So diolch yn fawr, and I welcome the questions. And as Nina said, the the red ragged issues there are the ones that we all need to look at and make sure that we're on track with everything. So diolch yn fawr I chi gyd.
Dim problem. Diolch. Okay, I think it's nearly 20 past 11. So we are absolutely bang on time. I would like to have a bit of a comfort break so that we are absolutely ready to kick off with the adults stuff shortly. Councillor Gareth, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just to remind you that Councillor David wanted to give us an overall update on the a short summary on the overall budget, and I know
Okay,
he needs
perhaps
to go at some stage.
Councillor David, what time do you need to go?
Sorry, Chair. I'm waiting for a phone call. That could be any time between 11 and 12 o'clock. So I haven't received one yet.
Okay, I think then if we could, because we've got a little bit of time to spare, it's sort of now you yourself have heard the way that we've approached children's. It would be helpful, I think, just to have your perspective before we go into adults, and if there's anything you think that um as you have oversight of the whole budget, you think that it would be helpful for scrutiny to do some consideration of. But yeah, if you feel that you'd like to say anything now from your perspective, that would be great.
There's nothing specifically that I'd add to what's been said around children's, and obviously the detail around adults is to come. It was my intention initially just to give you a very high level introduction to the overall budget, looking at the levels of savings within the budget that are required, the challenge that was presented to us in setting the budget, and the council tax level that we've had to set to balance the budget. But apart from that, there was nothing else I really intended to introduce at this stage, Chair.
Okay, would it be helpful then if I bring you in at the end of everything before we go into private session, just to give your perspective on those points?
Yes, I can do that if I'm still here, obviously.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, while David's still here and James on the call, can I just request that somebody goes through the papers and correct some of the simple adding ups that don't add up? For example, in sections 3.28 and 3.35, I know it's only roundings, but the figures don't add up. And I just think it needs to be correct.
Yeah, yes, we can do that. If you drop me a line, a note, Councillor Gareth, I think there are about 260, 270 pages there. So it's unfortunate if there is an error, but there we are. That's human error. With that number of pages, I guess there's always the possibility that there might be one, but thank you for pointing it out. And if you send me the detail, and we'll ensure that's corrected.
Thank you. Okay, on that note, I think we'll have a short comfort break. If people can be back in good time. So I'll say sort of 5 to 7 minutes, because I really want to kick off the next stage before 11:30. But what do we do, Carrie Ann? Do we just put all of our microphones and videos on?
Yes, please. So if you could
Off,
turn your
take them.
microphones off and your videos off, I'll pause the recording, but we will still be live, so members of the public will still be able to see. Hence, videos
Okay.
and microphones off.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back. We're now moving on to scrutiny of the adults budget. Thank you again to Nina as the director, senior officers for attending, and also Councillor Pete. Again, I'd like to hand over to Councillor Pete as a portfolio holder to lead on this and take us through the presentation. And at the outset, ask the same question again that I did for children's. in that it would be interesting and helpful to hear where you foresee the biggest risk impacting your budget for the next year, and also the biggest positives you expect to see in the budget, um, and how, the transformations that are happening and how they will have them, where you expect to see the most positive impact, both budgetary and from an outcomes perspective. And then the other overarching question that I asked children's was in relation to service pressures. How have you learned from previous years in terms of building in next year's service pressures? Have you changed the approach, or has it worked previously? Are there any themes that you've brought in to identify other pressures, and how confident you are that there's not more pressures that are likely to come in? So on that note, I'll hand over to you, Councillor Pete. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for the late arrival. I had power problems at home.
That's okay. Oh, sorry, just to interrupt, Pete. I should just say as well, that as we did on the other one, up to half an hour would be great for a presentation and for you to talk through everything, and then we'd like to move on to questioning.
Thank you for that, Chair. Just checking who's sharing the presentation that was circulated previously. Thanks, Nina. Okay, thank you, Chair and colleagues. When I took over the social service adult social care portfolio in October, I was looking at the Q2 reports and asked officers to look in detail at the savings we'd been making historically and actually evaluate how effective we have been in making them and how effective those similar type savings would be moving forward. I asked that because I didn't want to get into a position where we were accepting savings year on year that at some point reach the end of their road because we've saved everything that we can. And you'll hear more about the outcomes of that when we look at the Q3 report in another meeting. But the work done there reflects itself in this year's budget, and I will talk about that when we come on to the savings. The base budget that we started off the year with was £203 million, just short of 204 million. We are looking, having looked at savings, efficiencies and pressures, to come in with an 8% increase to £112 million for the coming budget year. These changes are made up of significant financial cost increases that can be categorised in two areas: growth demographic and an inescapable pressure. Focusing on the growth demographic first, the service has two types of growth in demand, one that's quantifiable, which you see here, and one that is held at risk. The quantifiable one is the changeover from children's services to adult services of individuals that we've been working with jointly for 2 to 3 years, as they reach adulthood and move into a different support environment. And this is a simple case of knowing very early on what they will need in terms of the requirements of the service, and we can catalogue them, right size them, and give them the most effective opportunity within the budgets that are available to them. That is the growth demographic that you see here. The second growth is, if you like, at the other end of the age scale, with people coming into the service for the older adult service or the services required from someone of working age who has an accident that requires domiciliary care, residential care, or nursing care. This is the pressure that we hold at risk because we cannot fully quantify it. It comes from a number of areas. Some of it are people that are new to the system. Others of it is changing requirements as people grow older, as they move from domiciliary care potentially into residential care, or if they're in residential care requiring nursing care or more specific services that aren't covered by funding from the Health Board. Of course, this is sadly tempered with the fact that a number of our individuals that we support will pass away during the course of a year. So we hold it at risk because we see those figures fluctuating almost on a daily basis as different requirements come in. That it becomes obviously a pressure in the following year as the full year impact of the risk budget materializes on the service net the previous contracts that are no longer required for the reasons I've outlined. We then come on to the bigger figure, the inescapable pressures. This is a term we use for things that are unavoidable. So this includes wage rises as a result of the uplift in the real living wage. It includes contractual obligations where a contract has involved a CPI or an RPI uplift. And this is where we are seeing quite significant pressures emerging almost every year at the moment because of the quite significant increases in wage inflation, and until the last year, significant increases in CPI, RPI inflation that was not foreseen when some of our historic contracts were entered into. Historically, a lot of these contracts were entered into 4 or 5 years ago or more, where inflation was running at quite a low level and was therefore manageable. Hopefully, we will see the environment return to those figures, but we are not quite there yet. The additional costs that you're identifying there as pressures, we've already talked under Children's Services about magic notes. Our experience within adult social care is that this is a major benefit, not just to improvement in quality of note taking, but also in quality of meetings, as officers are able to focus much more on the client and the conversation and the flow of the conversation rather than having to stop to take notes in meetings. It's also having a significant impact on the work-life balance of some of our social workers, as they're now able to complete the administrative side of their work in a much more timely effort. You have mentioned previously about translation, but this is another area where the actual process of language translation is a lot slower than checking an AI generated comment or set of translators. So the Magic Notes costs here are actually the costs of rolling this out across other parts of the adult social care service, where we would expect to realise similar benefits. We're then looking at costs around transformational change that are leading to efficiencies elsewhere. This area is subject to tender at the moment, where we are looking at bringing in a third-party partner to build on the transformation analysis that we have undertaken over the past 18 months, which has fostered a culture of innovation, testing ideas out, being willing to try things, and if they work, expanding them rapidly, or if they're not working, closing them down in an appropriate manner. As we move forward and look at the coming year, these are the areas where staff are a bit like a Formula One team, looking for marginal improvements at every opportunity. In terms of the contract uplifts, particularly in respect of our residential care, we have a similar fair cost of funding, which, for those of you that are familiar with the education service, is perhaps analogous to the school funding formula, where we look at, benchmark and analyse costs in a sector, to develop a funding model that can be applied across the service area, ensuring that we have the right funding in the right place. This also, though, presents one of the risks to the service in that the cost of funding and the differential cost between residential and nursing care, and where the costs lie between ourselves and the health board, is an area of quite significant concern and work needing to be done. We have to say we have a good partnership with our immediate and adjoining health boards in terms of managing particularly the transfer of care after a hospital stay. And you will have seen that in the press releases that we put out just after Christmas, where we highlighted how additional funding coming into the service can actually be used very effectively within our service area to deliver significant change. And that is something that we need to bear in mind in the longer term, that actually sometimes the bottlenecks are a lack of staffing or a lack of financial resource to deliver. I'm pleased to say that the experience we learned over the Christmas period and the processes that we put in place have come into play this week, as we've been able to give some significant help towards Wye Valley Trust in meeting their needs in the challenging situation they have at the moment. If I move on to the savings, the big thing you will see missing here from previous years is right sizing of contracts, particularly within the domiciliary care market. We now believe we have reached the point where historic practices, particularly double-handed arrangements, have now been minimised, and we don't at this stage foresee any additional savings coming out of that area this year. That will now move very much to business as usual in terms of managing the contracts we have, reviewing and ensuring that what people are required is what they are given in the right manner. Where we are seeing some savings are the areas that are highlighted here. The void management is actually a benefit coming out of the changes that we're seeing within the housing department as much as ours, in that the turnaround times between one of our residents moving out of supported living to the next one moving in are now much shorter, and we are managing that effectively. So we're seeing a saving there. In terms of the extra care, this relates to the full year impact of a saving that we're now seeing, particularly out of the extra care facility up in Welshpool, travelling through into the system. The recharges are ones where there is a little bit more risk associated to them because they are directly related to changes in our interactions with other partners. But the largest figure is the cost reductions on independence planning, and this will be the first stage of the delivery of the transformation work that started previously, where we're looking to improve resilience within our population, to looking at significant cost avoidance in terms of greater strength-based support and ensuring that individuals coming into the service are being delayed by the strengths that they have from needing a service. So we're expecting this to feed through. And then indirect payments, this is something we see many years, where payments are coming in and going out, where payments are not being fully utilised and funding is coming back. So that outlines the budgetary position. But Chair, you asked me to look at the strengths and the challenges. They are as broad as the service is as an offering. We look to our Paris owned care homes. You'll see in the forward-looking FRM that we are looking at £1 million saving in year 5, possibly brought forward into year 3 or year 4. That is the first stage of a significant change in focus within the final stages of the care environment. We've seen over the last 5 years the introduction of extra care, and extra care facilities across the county are now seeing a reduction in the need for residential care. And as people grow older, a significant shift towards nursing care provision. And the Paris Home Care Home plans over the next 10 years looks to mirror that as we look to shift a lot of our current residential home placements into new environments where the focus will over time shift from residential to nursing care, enabling residents to remain closer to the communities they've lived in their entire life, because nursing care within Powys is very challenging to run in a for-profit type environment. So getting to that point, embedding the new contract this year, and with the new contract as a strategic partner in the development, that is one area where there are significant opportunities for the service, but also some risks. Looking broader, we've been, like Children's Services, been very successful in training our own social workers. But the one area where there is a risk in the short, medium, and long term is in the mental health approved mental health practitioner social care environment, the AMPs. People responsible for looking at Dole's notices and similar. This is a highly specialised area of social work with very significant experience and training requirements around them, where there is a national shortage. And the demographic profile of our own workers at the moment suggests we need to replace a lot of those in the coming years. So that is an area of challenge. In terms of the strengths, though, I really need to look at the skills of the people that we have within them. Over the past 18 months, all of our senior, middle, and some of our day-to-day staff have been participants of the adult services diagnostic process. And that has sparked and encouraged them to innovate, come up with ideas, and be prepared to think about how they could do things differently, and feel confident that they are working in an environment where no idea is a bad idea. It just might be some ideas get carried forward sooner rather than later. And I think that from my initial discussions, because I've been working with each of the area leads, almost all of them have come up with ideas in those discussions where they want to explore things that were not ready to go into this year's FRM, not necessarily mature enough to go into the 5-year plan, but they now want to bring them forward either as an investor save or an in-year saving that will materialise to mitigate other problems. And I'm very, very welcoming of that concept. In terms of grant funding, because we touched on this in Children's Services, officers will highlight specific grants that may be coming to an end, but I would highlight RIF funding in the same way that it was within Children's Services. It is a major transformation source of funding. If we look at home support in particular, it's an area where an idea was tested that we are now looking to mainstream and expand. But as it stands at the moment, it is an area of funding that comes to an end at the end of the 26-7 financial year. And it is a pot of funding that would be attractive to an incoming government to transfer into frontline services. So the major focus that myself, my co-vice chair and chair on the board of the regional partnership, have actively encouraged the review of all of the areas that is supporting to determine whether they can be mainstreamed or whether they are services that are not delivering on what they were hoping for, as a preventative measure in case we find ourselves very late in the day not having a replacement grant under any new administration in Cardiff Bay. So in summary, it's a service that has challenges. It is increasingly one of the biggest spenders and one of the biggest resources we need to work with. It is an area where the demographics of the county, as we attract a lot of old residents who 20, 30 years ago retired to the area, often on early retirement, are now increasingly providing challenges for our users. And that is something that if we look at the demographic profile of the county and the life expectancy growth, is something that we probably are looking at another 5 to 10 years worth of growth before the natural demographics start to even out on it. I don't know if Nina wants to add anything at this point. I think there were 2 or 3 other things that I may have missed, but I'll pass over to her and either of the 3 officers that are with her if there's anything specific they want to contribute.
Thanks, Councillor Pete. Nina, yes, do you want to add anything?
Thank you, Chair. And as per Councillor Sandra, Councillor Pete, very detailed introduction there for you. I don't think much was missed. You asked the question, as with children's, about what I see as director as the biggest risks, positives, opportunities, challenges, etc. So I was just intended to come in here and briefly take you through those, but the portfolio holder has absolutely put forward a lot of the very similar things that I'm going to raise. In terms of risks, obviously we've spoken about the demography and how there's growth demography for the known transitions from children's services, but I do think we always have to note that any additional other transitions or demography pressures into adult social care are held at risk, etc. The service has been very successful at holding those within the service at the moment, but of course there is also always that risk with the ageing population of the county that we have of that increasing. So it's just important to note here as a potential risk. Councillor Pete has talked in detail about the service pressures and the contract provider uplifts. I think, looking at the sum held in that area, that pressure, again, I have to flag that as a risk area. It's a significant sum of money, absolutely noting that. And there is an element of negotiations with contractors and providers as part of that. Therefore, I'm flagging that as a risk area. In terms of transformation, a really exciting opportunity, not just for adult social care, but for wider as we move into next financial year. The service, adult social care, has been very successful over recent years, delivering cost efficiencies, transforming, delivering change, delivering improvements, etc. Councillor Pete was talking about the right sizing of placements. The significant amount of work that has been happened across the service, and I just want to say a real big thank you to the officers, because there's been lots of positive work, but there is a question of how much further we could go with that in terms of we are doing the work now up front. There isn't the opportunity perhaps that there was a couple of years ago. So you'll note that we're not including that as a set cost efficiency target moving forward. What we do have is the first of the cost efficiency reductions coming forward that have been found from the diagnostic work that we've undertaken. So that's the 1.849 million that's been included in the proposed savings for next year. You'll note also within the pressures that there is obviously a cost to implement that to begin with as well. But this is the work, and I know as a scrutiny committee, we've been and talked to you through about that diagnostic work, about the areas of focus, etc. So this is the start of that coming in next year. We have RAG rated that as an amber at this stage, is work in progress, etc. But lots of positive work happened so far. We've got 2 workstream leads already in place, starting to do working across the service, working with partners as well. So want to assure you that work is in progress with that, so which is very exciting. And I know it's an area that we will be coming to speak to you about in the future, as it's an area your scrutiny committee are very much keen to be involved in. In terms of uh, AMPs, absolutely. In terms of workforce, Councillor Peat is right. That we now are at the stage where we've got specialist key areas that are of concern, and approved mental health professional practitioners is absolutely an area of focus and priority for us moving forward in terms of workforce. Just wanted to note that here for you today. But it's a really exciting opportunity looking forward for next year. But I do have to flag there are risks and challenges across adult social care, and you're happy to go into any more detail as you see fit on that. I think, Chair, if I hand back to yourselves, and we're happy to open for questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you both, and thank you, Councillor Peat. I think you've got on top of your brief incredibly quickly, so you've not been in place for long, and personally, I'm impressed at the level of detail that you were able to speak on the surface. So thank you for that. We do have questions. We do have some questions which I think we're going to have to move into private session on in relation to Powers Home care homes. So I'm going to park those for now. But yes, members, please start putting up your hands. Councillor Gareth, I can see your hands first. So over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mine is a question that follows on from Nina's comments about the discussions with the providers around the uplift and the contractual uplift. I wonder if Nina or perhaps Rachel could expand a little bit around that discussions that you have with the contractors, and what benchmarking you do around that process. I've also got a concern that we've got a single line for 26-27 of 8.5 million for a pressure. I understand it, but I think I asked this question last year as well. I would like to see that figure broken down a little bit more between the constituent areas. How much is contract related? How much is due to other pressures, etc. Because I've just done a quick calculation, and I think it relates to 31% of the overall pressures for the council as a whole. That single line does. So I think I'll leave it at that for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Who can come in on that, please?
I'm happy to come in on that point. Certainly in terms of the contract negotiations, one of the things that we have in place, and I think Councillor Peat has already mentioned this in the presentation, is we have a methodology for care homes called the fair cost of care, which was undertaken about 5 years ago, and that was based on a very detailed open book analysis of all of the costs of the services. So that is very, very detailed and very accurate. All of the care homes have agreed to that process and commit to that methodology, and that's uplifted on an annual basis. Where we are seeing any variations from that methodology, we would obviously ask for detailed evidence, and we would work very closely with all of the contracts to understand their costs and to understand those pressures, and to get really into the detail of around whether they're reasonable, whether we can work with that provider to provide them with support. It could be workforce pressures, etc. So it is about taking a case-by-case basis and analysis around some of the detailed pressures that pertain to some of those providers. In terms of disability services, in terms of residential, there's a national framework called CCAPS. And again, that's a nationally agreed framework which providers commit to, and that's based on an open book analysis. But you can't really underestimate the resource intensity that it takes in terms of those undertaking that detailed analysis. But it is necessary in order to understand and be able to rationalise any of those pressures based on that financial evidence.
Thank you,
Has that
Rachel.
answered your question, Gareth?
No, it's answered my question and also given me the reassurance that we are challenged as authority. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, Gareth?
Not at this.
Okay, Councillor Chloe.
Thank you, and thanks for the presentation again. I've got a couple of questions, and some of it is, just from my understanding, really. So the first one is triggered by the last one, really, about how much negotiating power do we have with providers? Is it a competitive market? Is this something that there's only really one provider, and so we kind of have to just work with them on getting something we can agree? That would be really good to understand. And then the budget includes 1.849 million around independence planning savings. And I just wondered if you could outline what some of those might be, what impact those would have on service users, and then any other impacts around waiting times for assessments, adaptations, or care packages that the budget might have on our service users across Powys.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to interject slightly because can you answer Chloe's first question first? And then just bear in mind what she said about independence planning, but I also know that Carol has a question on that, as do I. So I just wonder whether we might all have our little say first before you then answer the independence planning point. So could you answer Councillor Chloe's first question first, please?
Sorry, was that around another one on commissioning, wasn't it, Councillor
Yeah,
Chloe?
about bargaining power.
Bargaining power. Would it be okay if Chair Rachel Evans came in again to respond to that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are you able to repeat the question on that?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm clear.
Yeah, that's fine. I suppose what I don't understand is whether or not there's lots of providers out there who are all bidding for this work with the council, or whether there's only one provider that we have to go to for the adult social care activities in different areas, and therefore they've kind of got us over a barrel, and the negotiations, we have to negotiate with them, or whether it's a competitive process.
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And in answer to that, it's really complex and it's a mixed market because obviously adult services commission providers for a whole range of population groups. So we have the care home market in terms of residential and nursing. There's a mixed bag in terms of residential. Many of those are private organisations, residential care homes, but again, they've agreed to a rate of funding, so that is pretty consistent. We have our own contract in terms of Powys-owned care homes, for also in terms of residential. In terms of the domiciliary care market, that is pretty consistent. We have a dynamic purchase system, which has recently gone through a refresh process. So we have a very, very fair and equitable mechanism by which to contract that element of services. And actually, that refresh process has been quite transformative in being able to attract providers to Powys, to have a consistency in terms of funding mechanism, rates of pay, the contract management and key performance indicators that we require. And actually, providers have given us really good feedback around that engagement process. It's been a win for them in terms of organisations and a win for us in terms of capacity. And just to give you some data around that, in terms of people waiting for domiciliary care, in January 2024, there were 111 people waiting. In 25, there were 64. And in January of this year, there were only 41. So that's really had a significant impact. So it is a mixed market. One of the things that we adopt in Powys is we take a relational approach to contracting and work really closely with providers and really see them as partners. And we use their expertise and their intelligence in order to feed into that commissioning process, and it's worked really, really well.
Can I build on this theme, please? Just whilst Chloe has raised it. So obviously a huge amount of our pressures relates to this area, and Chloe has rightly asked about bargaining powers, and I realise it's a mixed market what you're saying, but there are areas where it sounds like we are a little bit over, to use Chloe's phrase, over a barrel. So what level of work are you able to do with other local authorities to see how they are addressing this problem? Because I presume we're not working in a silo here. And then, so that's a question with you at an officer level, but then also to Councillor Pete and any of the other cabinet members here. I guess it's a little bit similar to the children's situation you've got, isn't it? Where you've got these pressures which are completely out of your hands that are being controlled by a external private sector market, and how is the Welsh Government supporting you? And I'd also just, if Jane is able to bring in some information on this, given, we're talking of like £8.5 million worth of pressures. If you're looking at this in terms of the increase in settlement that we get from Welsh Government, it's a drop in the ocean, the increase, isn't it, to the pressures that we need to cover for adult social services that are outside of our hands. I realise I'm kind of having a bit of a rant here in a convoluted kind of way, but what are we able to do outside of council level, because this is so out of our hands? And whoever wants to just come in, because I do think Chloe's raised a really important point.
I'll come in and respond to your last point first. This is not a problem that is unique to Powys. It's not a problem that's unique to Wales. The cost of adult social care is quite honestly crippling council budgets across the country. It is something that needs to be tackled at a national level. It needs to be undertaken by a review that is absolutely cross-party, possibly at a Royal Commission level, possibly at a level below that. But we have a massively aging demographic across the UK. We have ever increasing demands and complexities within the social care environment, and no one council alone can tackle this. And you will see that when you look at the FRMs for all of the unitary and county councils in England and Wales as they're published in the coming weeks. In terms of what we can do, we are continuing to lobby Welsh Government, and Welsh Government are continuing to lobby Westminster, but it is a national picture. The one thing I would say that is a positive that we've done, and I mentioned this previously, is that we were able to demonstrate that when the resources are put into the right place, they can deliver. And the domiciliary care work that we've done to improve the provision, combined with the extra resource that we've targeted into developing an integrated team with our district general hospitals around the outside the county and community hospitals within it, has shown significant improvements to that interface. So if we see more resource coming into social care, that will most definitely help the problems we're seeing in the NHS as well. But I know Jane wanted to come in. I will pass her across to you, which I think will follow up with the financial response rather than the political response to the same question. And then officers will come in with some more operational specifics.
Thanks, Pete. Jane?
Thanks, Chair. And yes, there's a lot happening in that political sphere, but there's also a lot happening at an officer level. So as the 151 officer for Powys, I meet routinely with other 151 officers across all 22 authorities. We have that routine and regular forum, and collectively we make sure that message is going back through the Welsh Government officers that attend those forums to inform the wider political debate then at a Welsh Government level. So we do that routinely. We're also supported in that through the WLGA. We complete a budget survey every year, and that helps the WLGA complete a report that's very detailed that then goes back into Welsh Government that sets out all of the issues that we have from a local authority perspective. We have currently got Audit Wales doing a local government funding arrangements study. And as part of that, myself and other 151 officers have also been interviewed, and we've been quite clear in terms of setting out some of the challenges where, as you rightly indicate, when we're seeing pressures at the volume we are, settlements then are not helping us meet those pressures. And very often that is dictated, as you rightly say, based on the legislative requirements imposed upon us, particularly when funding doesn't always follow through when there are new requirements. So all of that is clearly being fed back to Welsh Government, and we continually do that. And it'll be interesting to see what this Audit Wales study actually does set out to around those local authority funding arrangements. And Councillor Peters is absolutely right in terms of there needs to be that wider perspective, you know, the impact of social care and health outcomes, how that then impacts on health authorities. But not only that, it's the wider remit around it. Where does the youth service, where does our leisure services, where do all of those things interact on those particular elements as well? So there's a lot of discussion that goes on behind the scenes. So I just want to give you that assurance.
Thank you both. I can see James has got his hand up, and I guess my interjection at this stage is it sounds like you're all doing a lot of work to knock. Are you all knocking on a closed door, or is there any signs of that door starting to open? And James, did you want to come in?
Well, thank you, Chair. I'm listening to this conversation with great interest because it's like a sort of looking in a mirror, really, when it comes to education and particularly the area of additional learning needs, where exactly the same problem. You have some very and the legislation is good around social care and additional learning needs in Wales, and I think in many respects it's considerably better than it is in other parts of the United Kingdom. But the resource doesn't follow. You've got to, if you're going to make these legislative requirements, and they are good requirements and ones we'd all love to be able to fulfil to the maximum, but you've got to then commit the resource. And it is about money because from money flows the ability to recruit, for example, and we all know about the challenges around that. And I guess what needs to be done really is to find out what it is, what is the actual sums of money required, what are the actual sums of money required to meet all of these legislative requirements to the standard which the legislators would very much like us all to meet. And I mean, I suspect tomorrow at Learning and Skills budget discussions, exactly the same conversation will be had around additional learning needs, and it's very appetite and very right that it is. But it is remarkable what is being delivered with what is a very limited resource. But despite all of the improvements you can see with adult social care, the discussion now, despite all the improvements, the innovations, the vastly improved working with the health board and so on and so forth, nevertheless, there's still a huge extra demand in this budget from the service to meet those pressures. And goodness knows if we hadn't made those innovative improvements, how much bigger that demand would have been. But you can have exactly the same conversation around additional learning needs. So it's across the board, isn't it? It's across all and it impacts all council services because if we can't properly fund one service, then it has a massive impact on the others. Thank you for letting me come in on this. It's not.
Thanks, James. I can see Councillor Jake, the leader, has got his hand up. Jake, did you want to come in on this point?
Just briefly, and James's comments are really helpful in that context. And I think Pete indicated, didn't he, earlier, Councillor Pete indicated that where we have sought and been rewarded with some specific additional funding, we have seen how we have changed the life chances and the experiences of people exiting hospital this year because we were able to put a different type of service around that and create an improvement. You were asking, what are we doing to ask? Well, we're actually reasonably pleased with the budget settlement that was achieved through negotiations and the coming together of two parties to get that vote through. I mean, personally, I was doing an awful lot of work behind the scenes to try and find somebody that would come forward and get an improved offer for local government, in particular, some of additional resource around social care. And as leader of the Lib Dems in Wales, as it were, from a local government point of view, and the having my WLGA hat on, we are constantly lobbying for additional resource to have more full funding in this area, because as Councillor James just indicated, if we funded this properly from a governmental level, that would mean that there would be less pressure on all of the other services which are negatively impacted by the scale of pressures that we see here. And the constant ask is, we, as a term I'm going to use, is shift left. Be less reactive. Get upstream is the other thing that they say. Actually, intervention at an earlier point rather than being reactive, being proactive. Everyone says is the answer. But of course, we haven't got a commitment to put those resources into it at a national level. But we do lobby. We're consistently lobbying. And there is a huge amount of collaboration across local authorities of all political colours around this issue. Because, as you've indicated, Chair, we need to be united on this. And we're working really hard to try and get all the resource in that we possibly can. I just thought I'd respond in that way.
Thank you, thank you. And I think probably that sort of leads us on to what you've sort of touched on sort of this strength-based independence type intervention, early intervention type work. So I think now we've kind of gone off on that tangent, and I'm sorry to Chris and Councillor Ange, although Councillor Ange, I do know did you have questions on independence planning? I'm not sure, but I do want to come back to Chloe's second question. Chloe, do you want to repeat your question on independence planning? And then I'm going to bring in Carol, and then we will ask for responses on that.
Thank you. I think probably it's just mine's quite broad, really. I just wanted to understand a bit more about what the independence planning savings might look like from a service user's perspective, and what they might involve, and then any impact that might have on things like waiting times for assessment, adaptations, or care packages, anything else like that that's involved that sort of might come into that broad
Yeah, I
headline.
think there's crossover with your question, isn't there, Carol? Carol, are you still? I can't see your hand.
Yes, I'm here.
Carol, was that crossover with yours? What was your question on this one?
My question is, how is service changes going to impact on clients' care?
Yeah, that's it. So I think there's the issue we've got with this is it's a huge ambitious amount. There's not a significant amount of detail in terms of what's going on, and I appreciate that's because it's all being planned following the diagnostic. However, where I'm slightly confused, and it might be that it can be easily clarified, is that both yourself, Nina, and Councillor Pete have commented on how, as a cost efficiency, we've almost done everything we can in terms of strength-based, right-sized packaging type efficiencies. But if I look at the impact assessment in relation to what it says about this independence planning, it says strength-based right sizing of care packages has several impacts, and this is where it's talking about your 1.8 million. Enhanced independence by focusing on individual strength and capabilities. Care packages can be tailored to promote greater independence. So is it just that we don't have the detail that you can share? Is it strength-based? Is it more prevention or early intervention rather than strength-based and right-sized packaging? I'm just slightly concerned that there's just a lack of detail, particularly in the impact assessment. And I know previously we've questioned why we don't get individual impact assessments before, but when will those individual impact assessments come? Maybe it's not the right time now because it's all still being designed. But what can you tell us today, and what can you say to give an assurance for service users that, services are not going to be depleting, and this is allowing people to have better outcomes?
Nina will come in with the more detail, but just to take your point around strength base has two elements to it. If you like, the easier one has been the work that we've been doing up until now, where we've been looking at the packages that we have and changing, revising them. So ensuring on review that we've got historic packages right, that changes in technology are enabling us to do additional work, that where we've actually got a double-handed care package, that we actually need the double-handed care to deliver it. What we're doing now is taking that learning and moving it into just as children's services talk about edge of care, we're looking at moving it into that area. So we are working with people that are at risk of coming into care and working with them, building on their skills, building on their resilience to enable them to live longer on the edge of care rather than within care. And I think Nina will expand on that with some of the more specific projects.
Thank you. And I think that clarifies sort of my confusion in terms of the strength-based removing. But that being said, it is all quite nebulous. Is that the word? Like in terms of the detail, but there's probably, because that's all still to come. Nina?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The independence planning line that you can see in front of you today is the outcome of the diagnostic work that's been undertaken within adult social care. So we have brought this to scrutiny before, but I'm happy to take you through as a refresher on that. The independence planning is around working age adults specifically. There is cost avoidance and cost efficiencies opportunities identified under that area as part of the diagnostic work. So it's included things like having uh, um, individual independence plans for people. So looking at potential step downs in provisions from residential to supported living and shared lives, for example. It's about looking at supporting living hours and direct payments to help making sure that we're maximizing people's independence and helping them to live the life that they want to live. And it's about home care and making sure that is right as well. So at the moment, it's in the planning stages, absolutely, as you said. If there is going to be service changes, and that will come through as part of that with individual impact assessments. But it's also that cost avoidance and cost efficiency. So we've done a lot of work, as we've said previously, and that decision making, is now embedded in that change in culture in terms of decision making. And moving forward, that is a cost avoidance. But the cost efficiencies are around those stepping down of provisions as well that we've talked about, and that independence planning. So, Councillor Amanda, I'm really, perhaps if I may be so bold to suggest that this is, perhaps an area of focus for yourselves. You might want to have a deep dive into this area as a scrutiny committee so we could get really into the depth of this area.
Yeah, and I think that is already planned in terms of the diagnostic and a working group that we're hoping is going to be set up to look at the individual projects. But I just think from a budgetary perspective, where we're trying to make sure that, everything is like transparent, and where we know there's a risk or there's going to be an impact, that's as planned as it can be. That's where my line of questioning has come. So I think, yeah, you're right that we want to keep an eye on this. And I think the problem we've got is we can't see any like specific case examples of what this looks like in practice at the moment. And that's where it's difficult to pinpoint, what it all means. Has any other committee members got anything they want to ask on this, or any questions on this area? Okay, we'll park that for now then. but we'll probably have as a recommendation that we continue to review this. Councillor Chris.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think this may be a build on in some way because I think the discussion that's gone on has been really helpful, and it changed some of my questions that I've got. I'm pleased to see that the diagnostic is coming into play and building around a preventative model moving forward. And as Councillor Pete noted, we're moving to try and build in more resilience within communities so that they avoid coming into the services on the, I hope I've quoted him correctly in that sense. But I then notice in the proposed savings a recharge for occupational therapy assessments. And I just want to get some clarification here because one is, who is this recharge going to go to? Is that going to partners, so the health board, or is it going to clients? Because if someone needs an assessment to be done and that's not done, does that mean they miss out on a aid or adaptation within the home, which then means that they become more dependent more quickly and therefore enter the system either through the health side of it or through our front door in another route? And that could be increasing costs to us over the longer term rather than avoiding costs on there. And I just want to really understand that and where it's come from, because to me, it feels risky. And I just want to make sure that there are systems and processes behind the scenes. The other question I've got then is in relation to the mental health provision and approved social workers, particularly regarding detained liberties, etc. Can I just have some assurance that we've got that within our workforce planning and succession planning, that is in hand? Because again, it was cited that we've got some fallout from our own staff that could retire over the next couple of years. So I just want some assurances that that would be in play, because that again causes delays within the system.
Thanks, Chris. Nina, are you okay to pick up those points?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Walsh, for your questions. Just to assure you, it's not charges to people to undertake those assessments. It's where adult social care at the moment are undertaking assessments on behalf of others. So we will be making sure that the payments are allocated to other areas, other services as appropriate. So I just wanted to give you that assurance. Okay. So it is kind of resolving that issue. In terms of your question around mental health, is it all right, Chair, if I ask Rachel Williams, the Senior Manager who oversees that area, to come in and respond to that question, please?
Absolutely. Thank you. Rachel.
Yes.
Rachel, did you want to just say what your job role is?
Yeah, so I'm Rachel Williams and I'm the Senior Manager for Mental Health and Disability Services. Apologies, joined on Hazel's computer because I had technical problems.
That's okay.
So with regards to the approved mental health professionals, you are right to raise that. We do have a risk around that workforce. The majority of AMPs that we have are more mature in age, and at some point will probably be retiring. It sort of takes me back to our Grow Our Own social workers. So we've obviously put a lot of effort and into growing our own social workers. But just for everybody to understand, when you qualify as a social worker, you can't go straight on to do your qualification around your approved mental health professional status. You have to be qualified. You have to do your 2 years of newly qualified status and then be qualified for another 2 years before you can progress to do that training. So we're currently looking at that. We've got some non-AMPs in the mental health service who are now enrolling to do their AMP training. So
So we work with Cheshire East Partnership up in Chester University to facilitate that training. So we've currently got 2 commencing their training. It's a 6-month course. It's really in depth. They come out of their workplace, so we've got to think about backfill, but we do get money from Welsh Government to do that. So we've got 2 currently going. What we have done is we've put it out. You don't have to be a mental health social worker to do your AMP training. You just need to be that qualified social worker with an interest. So we're trying to encourage social workers from other parts of the council, i.e. children's services, adult services, disability services, older person services, because what we find is having an AMP workforce that comes from across social services gives us a lot more benefits. So if a children's social worker does their AMP training, they go back to their service, not only as an AMP, but with a far greater understanding around mental health, how it impacts children, how it impacts children's and families. So they take a lot of information back. So what I'm saying is we have got it in our site. We know we've got a lot of work to do. There's a national shortage of AMPs. They are walking from the workforce because it is a really, really tricky role. And yeah, so we've got it in hand. We know the risks. We're working. It's work in motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, has that answered all your questions?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Just before I bring Gareth in, because I think I know what he's going to sort of wrap up on, can I just ask a very quick question to Rachel about the extra care cost efficiency, and I guess to Pete as his Councillor Pete as his sort of strategic oversight. Do you feel that your cost efficiencies in that area are ambitious enough?
I'm happy to come in. Yeah. I think yes, for the initial, I think we have to bear in mind that this is still quite a new model. It's only been opened several months and it's still embedding as a service. And even though we're seeing some really good early outcomes and early efficiencies, the kind of longitudinal aspect of extra care is what will really bear out some of those efficiencies. So there is a longer term efficiency that we will see through that model. So I think it's the right thing to be cautious in terms of our ambition for this year, given the fact that it's still quite a new model and we still have other developments in train in Ystrad and in Brecon. So whilst we develop the expertise and we work with implementing that model, we will definitely see greater efficiencies throughout the years. But I think it would be sensible to be cautious in this year. And if we see greater efficiencies, then it's a significant benefit.
Yeah, and I think when we come to have some updates on this in due course and see how the other projects are going, we'll probably be asking the question again. So
absolutely.
Yeah, but thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've been sat here listening to the conversation, and I'm a little bit concerned about how certain officers and the officers are that we can achieve that 1.849 million saving for cost reduction in independence of planning, and also the other 2.5 million that goes into further years. And I'm thinking whether we need to have a separate impact assessment for that area and £8.5 million around the contract uplift, etc. I don't know, but I just feel there's a little bit of that doubt about the achievability of making that saving.
Yeah, I think I've got some concerns too, Gareth, and I think given that, Nina has, said that there's detail to come and it's all in the pipeline and we have had, the background as to what's led to this. But I think where I'm not 100% confident is how, if that's the case and there's lots of information to come, how do you calculate 1.8 million?
Chair, could I come in there? Because this has come from the diagnostic work. So the diagnostic work has identified the opportunity. So we've got all of that information and detail and evidence, and that's been shared with yourselves as a health and care scrutiny. So that is there. We have that evidence to back up where the sums of money have come from, where the opportunities sit, and the evidence behind it, and where they are cost efficiencies and cost avoidance. So I just wanted to give that assurance that the what you see in the FRM in the future years is aligned and timetabled per year as per the outcomes of the diagnostic.
Gareth, did you want to come back?
No, I think I'm satisfied with that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
But I still question whether we need a separate impact assessment on this area, and whether Peter or Nina thinks it's covered enough within the overarching impact assessment that's attached to the papers.
Can I just come in, Chair?
Yep.
I've challenged officers really strongly throughout the entire budget process around them being able to evidence what they're putting in front of me. Many of us in this room have been involved in the diagnostic to a greater or lesser extent, and the savings that are being brought forward here are very firmly embedded in that. Now, this is, if you like, the strategic figure. You've already seen the work within Scrutiny, but as we move forward on to the specific proposals, those specific proposals will have their own impact assessments, in the same way that if you think back, the daycare provision had an overarching assessment when it came to cabinet, and then each of the individual impacts have had their own assessment. So you'll have more opportunity to engage with those as we move from full strategic to full implementation. Probably most of them coming in over the next 6 months, because obviously they will need to be developed before April as we move them forward. Does that give you some reassurance, Councillor Gareth?
It does, Pete. And as Amanda said to you earlier, I think I'm impressed how quickly you picked this portfolio up. I'll reflect on it.
I didn't have a chance to respond to that, but I got to pay real tribute to the second tier officers who've been coming in and having briefings for me with myself and the head of service, who've touched on and covered the depth of their areas and brought me up to speed on a weekly basis with each of them, one in turn. So I really cannot understate how effective they've been.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane.
Yeah, just to add a little bit more, I think in terms of the diagnostic and the figures that were calculated in that, and of course, yes, they are estimates. The finance team were heavily involved in that work. There was also an assessment included in establishing the final figures around confidence and deliverability of some of those elements as well. So I think just for everybody's assurance, there's a lot of work gone into that. By nature, they are estimates, and we need to see what actually comes to bear the fruit that we're looking for. But just to give you that extra little added assurance there as well.
No, thank you. And yeah, we absolutely appreciate there's been a lot of work. It's just, I'm always sort of thinking about this from a member of the public's perspective on if they were listening into this meeting, would they feel that it is clear from what we've heard today and what is in the papers, that what that 1.8 million breakdown is absolutely apportioned to, and any impact that that's going to have, including positive impact, which is what it's all about. And I know we have had the diagnostic come to scrutiny, but it is also correct for me to say that we haven't yet done a working group deep dive into this area to consider what all of these projects look like. And so that's where I'm sort of questioning, how are we? Are we able to be any more transparent at that stage at this stage in terms of case scenarios and apportionment of that 1.8? But I think we've got to where we can get to on that, and I look forward to continuing to work with the officers, both in full scrutiny and in the working groups to understand more about it. I know we've got a couple of questions that are potentially relevant to Power's Own care homes that need to go into private session. We've got 20 minutes left on the timer. Committee members, before we just wrap up where we think we are with recommendations, does anyone have any more questions on adults budget? No. Okay. So in terms of recommendations, what have we got as a note? I think Gareth, I think I've got a note that you've asked for a breakdown of the pressures in adults to be more detailed. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got several notes that I've made, Chair. Do you want me to go through them?
Yeah, I think Carrie Ann, do we need to, before we go into private, do we need to go through both what our recommendations are that we're sort of coming together for both children's and adults?
Yes, please, Chair, and we'll need the committee to agree on them before we move into confidential.
Right.
Okay.
Shall I go
Okay.
through what I've got to start with then?
Do you want to start with adults?
Well, I'm going to start with the general one about having somebody checking the roundings and the numbers that they make sure they add up properly to start with. Then for adults, I've only got two.
Okay.
And that was the one around a further breakdown of the contract pressures of 8.56 million should be provided to scrutiny members across each of the areas. And I think the other one is that we should be provided regular updates around the significant identified savings over the next 2 to 3 years as we go through this next 12 months.
Yep, agree. I think both of those things have come up. Committee members, have you got anything else that you think would be helpful?
Chris has got his hand up, Chair.
Chris?
Could we just put something in around the mental health issue just so that we can keep an eye on that?
Is this a
Around
recommendation to Cabinet, or is it more that we're noting that we've got a concern and it's something that we want to be updated on going forward?
I think it's more for us as a committee at this moment rather than
Okay.
but it is a potential risk area.
Okay. I think, yeah, no, I agree. I think it's definitely to note. I think as an overarching recommendation for both adults and children's that I've got is that in the budget papers or when it goes to the next stage, I think it would be really interesting and helpful to hear some of the points you've said today on the political work that is going on and the WLGA work that's going on and the officer-led work that Jane talked about that is going on in terms of how you are trying to fight for more money for Powys. I know that it is touched on in the budget papers, but I just wonder whether it could be built on. So it's not really a recommendation of anything that changes anything in the budget, but I just think it helps give that context. Any committee members got any thoughts on that? Any disagreements or agree?
No, I'd agree with you there, Chair.
Agree.
Yeah. Councillor Ange?
I'd just like to know, when we put anything through, we have to do an immense amount of risk assessments and budgetary work on it before things go through. What sort of work does the Welsh Government actually have to do before it sends these things on to us? Because like it or not, they're not obviously not doing the work around it, are they? Because the budgetary pressures they're putting on us are ridiculous. And I'd like to see some of their work, their risk assessments, and what they think the budgetary pressures to local councils are. Sorry, but whether that goes in a recommendation to the cabinet or not, I don't know. But I feel for all of us, it's quite important.
Yeah, I guess the question is to Jane really, and the cabinet is, James mentioned that he was pleasantly pleased with the budget, but do you feel like the Welsh Government has justified it sufficiently, or is there any recommendations you like, more information from Welsh Government on how they justify their their settlements.
Yeah, because when they bring everything new in and they give us less money, if we did that, any cabinet would have to have an immense amount of risk assessments about being able to pay for it. Whereas they don't seem to be looking into how we're going to pay for it. They're just putting things forward and giving us amount of money that they think rather than, I know I've done a bit of work with the WLGA, and I'm afraid I think they're just too polite. We're all just too nice. They don't get down to the nitty gritty, but there we
I'm
go.
not sure how we frame that into a
I'm not.
recommendation, but
I know.
I understand. I understand the point you're making.
I'm probably going to get into trouble for saying it, and but I'm afraid it gives our staff a ridiculous amount of work. And that there's, the best outcome that they can get is that they're going to overspend. They can't help it. So there we go.
Children's recommendations. What have we got? Gareth? You're on mute. Gareth?
Yeah, I'm getting there to it now. I've just closed the file.
I've got that we would like to see the WLGA report relating to the not-for-profit stuff.
Yeah, got that one. Yeah.
I've also written down Gareth assurances, so I'm hoping you can elaborate on that one.
Yeah, the second one I've got, Chair, is I've got the one about the WLGA that you just mentioned. I think I've written in the Cabinet Welsh Government share the current strategy. Now they will remove the profit from the care placements and the expected timeline. That's what, and then the other one was around the identify 400k savings per year for across the post 16 and the other area, and that perhaps we have updates on that throughout the 26-27 year. So it's post 16 in residential homes.
Did you have a recommendation on demography?
No, I didn't pick that one up. No.
No. Okay, I'll cross that
Because
out.
I thought that was quite well covered in that line for
do.
demography.
Committee members, any other recommendations for children's?
And she's got her hand
And
up.
your hand is back up.
Sorry, I don't think it's supposed to be up. I haven't lowered it. Very sorry.
You will have your moment when we go into private session though on in a minute. So you can keep your hand up if you
got her
want.
hand up, Chair.
Carry on.
Sorry, Chair. So there's just a few recommendations that I noted as possible that I thought I'd just highlight. So I've noted there was one for committee to receive training or member development on how AI is being used throughout the council and what systems councillors have access to.
I think that's a real aside rather than a recommendation to do with the budget.
Okay. And then there was just one other one for the option of speaking to a person to always be available at the front door.
Yeah, that's to do with the pilot, isn't it? I think, it would be helpful for us to understand the outcome of the impact of that pilot and whether if it is positive, then because I presume if it doesn't work, then some of the savings within that may not pay off. But okay, that's great. Right. What's the process now, Carrie-Anne, in terms of we know we've got some questions on Powys Own care homes. I think what needs to happen is Nina just needs to give us a quick overview on why that is something that needs to be given in confidential session.
Yes, please, Chair. So if we could have a reasoning from officers on an explanation for why it's confidential, and then a proposer, seconder from committee, and a show of hands as well from committee.
Okay,
Chair,
thank you.
Before Nina comes in on that, you wanted Councillor David, if he's still here.
Oh, yes. Is David still here?
I'm not sure if he's still in the meeting.
I think he's left. Or has he left? I've seen a few people that have left.
Councillor David's no longer in the meeting, Chair.
Okay, I just wanted to be...
No, thank you for that. I'm sure we will hear from David as the coming weeks come in terms of his overarching comments on it. And if there's any questions he has specifically got for us as a committee, then I'm more than welcome to hear those. Okay, also, just whilst we're still in public session before we go on to it, it's just to publicly thank everybody for the work, the tremendous amount of work that goes into getting the budgets ready and, you know, delivering them to a way that we understand it. And I think, and I hope our understanding grows year on year in terms of how the services work. And so, yeah, thank you very much to you all. And on that note, I will hand to Nina about the Power Zone Care Home stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure what the committee want to ask about Power Zone care homes, but I have to say that at the moment we're in currently an open procurement process regarding the Power Zone care home contract. Therefore, we cannot discuss anything in public. But therefore, my recommendation or suggestion is, please, Chair, that we move into confidential session.
Yep, that's fine. I think. Can we have a proposer, please, if we understand the reasons for that?
I'm happy to propose, Chair.
Chris has got his hand up. Chris,
Second.
you have to second? Yeah.
Second.
Okay, on that note, do we do a show of hands, Carrie-Anne?
Yes, please. Okay, I will move us in now.